Show. The Krofft Super Show. Hey, it's me, Captain Cool, and the Kongs. The Krofft Super Shows, starring... Boss can't hold.
The Sorcerer.
So Electra Woman and Dyna Girl must out-trick him before he pulls the crime of the century. The whole Krofft Super Show, including Captain Cool and the Kongs, is coming up.
Electra Woman and Dyna Girl, fighting all evil deeds. Each writes for a magazine, hiding the life she leads. Electra Woman and Dyna Girl. Summon to Electra, faced by Electra Comps they wear. Laurie and Judy dare to face any criminal anywhere. Electra Woman and Dyna Girl.
Welcome back, citizens, to what I'm thinking of as a very different episode of the Batcave podcast. It's your old bat chum, John S. Drew here, and we're going to be taking a look at some of the television shows, movies, what have you, that Batman 66 has influenced over time. As you know, I'm already doing a series on the movies, some of the really bad ones that were done, the Turkish Batman, the Mexican Batwoman with Robert Long. And now I'm moving into the 70s, and there's some television shows that clearly have Batman 66 markings all over it, some more even than others, including this one that we're going to start reviewing here on the podcast. It's called Electra Woman and Dyna Girl. Now, as I like to do, I like to have someone to sort of bounce my ideas off of, to talk with and enthuse or boo or just, you know, wring our hands as Robert and I do when we're talking about the movies. And this time around, I brought someone I think pretty unique to the podcast here. He's never been on this one but before, but I have podcasted with him before, and I wanted to do so again. He's the host of the Flopcast podcast on the ESO network. Welcome to the Batcave, Kevin Eldridge.
Hey, John. Great to be here.
Great to have you here. So, okay, I said to you, Electra Woman and Dyna Girl. In fact, actually, when I put out the call to different people for other aspects of shows and things I wanted to talk about, you were the first one to get back to me. And I don't know if it was just you happened to see it at the right timing, or did you like not give this any thought at all and said, sure, this sounds like fun?
This was a no-brainer for me, John. I've been waiting for someone to ask me to podcast about Electra Woman and Dyna Girl for, I'm going to say, the past 44 years. So, yeah, I was good to go.
It's not something I'm sure many people would think of at the beginning. Let's do a podcast about Electra Woman and Dyna Girl, especially considering when you actually look at it, it's either 8 stories or 16 episodes if you break them up into their parts.
Right.
Yeah. But here we are doing it because, like I say, this show in particular has a lot, and we're going to get into it here, has a lot to, in terms of a pedigree with Batman, including its co-star, Judy Strangis.
That's right. She has a couple of Batman connections, right?
She has a couple of Batman connections, is absolutely right. Before we get into that, though, I just wanted to just briefly go over a few things here. The episode that we're going to start off with was the first one, called The Sorcerer's Golden Trick. It aired September 11th and 18th of 1976. Like I said, it was a 2-parter. What they would do is it was part of actually a TV show called Captain Cool and the Kongs. Wasn't that the name of the show?
I think the name of the show was the Krofft Supershow.
No, that's it. You're right. You're right.
Yeah, the Captain Cool and the Kongs, that was the band, the glam rock band that hosted the show.
Yes.
And it had a bunch of different segments. Electra Woman and Dyna Girl was one of those segments.
Yes, there was Electra Woman and Dyna Girl, Dr. Shrinker, and Wonderbug, and then Cool and the Kongs would do little skits around it and sing some songs. You know, they had their own theme song as well as each show having its own theme song. which I don't think there's ever been anything like that. Maybe the closest thing being the Banana Splits having a show within the show.
Yeah, because there were a few kind of anthology format series like that back around Saturday morning. And there were even some other segments as well, Bigfoot and Wild Boy, Magic Mongo.
Yes.
They rotated a couple in and out. And then there were different packages. At one point, they ran Electra Woman and Dyna Girl separately as its own half-hour show, I believe. They did that with Bigfoot and Wild Boy also.
Yes, I remember.
Then at one point, they reformatted, got rid of Captain Cool and the Kongs, and they brought in the Bay City Rollers to host.
Now that I don't remember. Huh.
Oh, yeah. This was the actual Bay City Rollers, who were like the hot, band out of Scotland that all the kids were into. And the Krofts signed them up to host their Saturday morning show, and I believe it was still called Krofft Supershow, and then they changed it to the Bay City Roller Show. They went through a few weird little format changes, and then it all went away. The band broke up, and that was the end. But man, I was a huge fan of the Krofft Super Show when I was a kid.
Yeah, me too. Maybe I purposely blocked it because I had a bit of a crush on one of the Kongs, and I don't even remember her name, but she was the one who was kind of a little bit taller and thinner and with the curly hair. Yeah,
there are a couple of women in the band. One was Nashville, and one was Super Chick.
Maybe it was Super Chick. Maybe. I'd have to go back and look.
Yeah, it was Captain Cool was Michael Lembeck, who we probably know better from One Day at a Time. He was
Correct.
Max, Julie's husband on One Day at a Time. So it was Captain Cool. It was Turkey, who was kind of the goofy one. And then you had Nashville and Super Chick. And then there was also a guy named Flatbush, who was a member at first. And then they trimmed it down to a quartet at some point.
I know I was like appointment television every Saturday morning. I think even more so with this show than even, dare I say it, the Super Friends.
Yeah, well, Super Friends had been running for, 2-3 years at that point, and even in reruns at this point, right? Because they did the season 1 of the Super Friends. They just ran for 3 years before they did the reformat with the Wonder Twins.
Right.
So we might have been a little burnt out on Super Friends at this point until they finally made some new episodes. So we were about ready for something new.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Now, it's interesting. Also, I looked up, as I always do, our writer and director for this particular story. It's called The Sorcerer's Golden Trick, written by Dick Robbins and Dwayne Poole. Now, Dick Robbins is your basic, Saturday morning fare guy. He did, 60s Spider-Man. He did a lot of episodes of Super Friends. He did Defenders of the Earth. But then you come to Dwayne Poole, and this guy is interesting because he started out doing Saturday morning fare. Then he moved on to series television like Love Boat and Hotel. And nowadays, he's doing Hallmark movies.
Oh.
Yeah.
Guy's still working.
Still working. Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. But I just think that's always interesting, the way whatever the direction takes you in terms of writing. It's like, here's a guy who wrote Electra Woman and Dyna Girl, and now he's writing 2-hour Hallmark movies, whether they're holiday themed, romantic, although there's always a romance involved in someone, even in the holiday ones. But I just find it so interesting the way these things take you. And the same deal goes with the director, Walter C. Miller, who directed 5 out of 8 of the stories for Electra Woman and Dyna Girl. But his big claim to fame as a director is he's mostly known for directing the Grammys for many, many years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He'd direct the odd TV show here and there, but, he did a segment of Wonderbug as well and some other shows and stuff, but it's mostly awards and specials, Bob Hope specials, the Grammys. That's his meat and potatoes as far as his directing skills. So that's really interesting to see as well. Again,
I wonder if that's perhaps because of the involvement of the Krofts, because the Sid and Marty Krofft did a lot of primetime variety show work as well. So maybe he was in their orbit from their variety work.
Possibly. Yeah, possibly. Now, what I'd also like to do before we even start talking about the episode, because we had a cast here, a regular cast, I want to take a focus on each member, like per episode, and just take a few moments to talk about them. And rather than talking about Electra Woman first, Deirdre Hall, I want to talk about Judy Strangis because she has the Batman connection. Some interesting things. First of all, she's actually only 2 years younger than Deirdre Hall.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Because she'd already been in the acting profession for quite a number of years. Obviously, she appeared on, as we mentioned, she appeared on Batman. She appeared on the Catwoman episodes, The Cat's Meow and The Bat's Kowtow, as a groupie of Chad and Jeremy, the British singing group, coming to visit the United States.
Okay, yeah, I knew that she'd been in those episodes, but I don't remember those episodes too well, so I didn't remember. Like, was it, how big a part was it? Was it a speaking part?
It was basically just, look, it's them, and then screaming.
All right.
Yeah. and she got the part because her brother is Sam Strangis, the producer of Batman.
Yeah, she's from a show business family. There's a few other people in show business in her family, I believe.
Yes, she's a niece to Spike Jonze.
Yeah, that's the one that really impresses me. I mean, I go back to, I'm into comedy music and Dr. Demento, so I grew up on Spike Jonze records on the radio.
Yeah, yeah. She would go on. I mean, she would appear in different TV shows and stuff like that. And she also did a lot of voiceover work for animated features. Her work goes all the way back to 1972. Didn't even know this existed. She did a voice for an ABC Saturday morning cartoon special, Tabitha and Adam and the Clown Family.
I don't know that one.
Basically, the ABC didn't want Bewitched to end. They actually offered Elizabeth Montgomery 2 more seasons. Right off the bat, regardless of the numbers, they were like, we'll, because she'd already done 8. And they said, do 2 more. And she said, no, I'm tired. I'm burnt out. I want to walk away. Plus her and William Asher were splitting up and stuff. Her husband, the producer and director on many of the episodes. But they still wanted a Bewitched thing. So they had been doing a whole series of specials. They did a Lost in Space cartoon movie that Jonathan Harris came back and did the voice of Dr. Smith for. And they decided to do this thing where Tabitha and Adam were teenagers and were in a band with clowns as the other musicians.
That does sound familiar now that you mention it. I do remember some attempts at animated Bewitched spin-offs.
Yes.
I don't think I ever saw that.
She was Goldie Gold in Goldie Gold in Action Jack.
Yeah, that's one I had almost forgotten all about that. And that was early 80s, and she was the star of that one, right? She's Goldie Gold. And that was sort of an action-adventure cartoon.
Yep.
From Ruby Spears.
From Ruby Spears,
yep. Produced Electra Woman for the Kroffts.
Yes. Yep. She was Pauline in Donkey Kong.
All right, yeah.
Yep.
There was another one that she was one of the... Wheelie and the Chopper Bunch.
Wheelie and the Chopper Bunch, yep.
Early 70s. She was one of the lead cars or bikes.
Yes. But the one that blew me away the most, because it's actually one of my favorite episodes, and I never, with all the people that you hear about who did voiceover work for Batman the Animated Series, I would have thought if I loved this episode so much, I would look up who the actress was doing the voice. She was Baby Doll.
Was she the actual Baby Doll character? I thought she was one of the other actors on the show that's kidnapped by Baby Doll.
Let me just quickly double check that. Oh no, Alison LaPlaca is Baby Doll.
Right.
Okay, Judy Strangis was Tammy Vance. So I guess one of the other actresses. Oh, I got all excited.
Well, it's still exciting.
Oh, it is exciting because it gives her the distinction. There are several men who appeared on Batman, including Adam West and Roddy McDowall, who also appeared on Batman the Animated Series, but she's the only female to appear from Batman to appear on the animated series.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's, it's a Paul Dini episode and some fun casting in it because you have Judy and they wanted kind of sitcom actors, I think, to be the sitcom family that's kidnapped by this crazy baby doll. So they have Alan Young is in it, yes, and Robbie Rist.
Yes.
Cousin Oliver from the Brady Bunch. And even the character looks, there's a guy that pops up in the cartoon that looks just like Robbie Rist.
Oh, yeah. No, I always loved that when a lot of times they would actually have the characters look like the actors they were portraying. The Superman Adventures did the same. When Jonathan Harris appeared on Superman, he looked like Jonathan Harris.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it's a nice touch.
But, it's Baby Doll was a great episode, and I think if you look at Judy's IMDb credits, that's her most recent acting credit.
Yeah,
is from 25 years ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, she had quite a career. She started young, and she worked steadily for several decades.
And it's amazing. Here we are now in 2019 talking about a show she did 40 years ago.
Yep. And I mean, if you get ready to feel super old, John, but this year, Dyna Girl turns 70.
Yeah, I saw that.
that just, my world doesn't make sense anymore.
She's looking, if that picture on IMDb is anything recent, she's looking pretty good for 70, but...
this is going back several years ago now. This is probably more than a decade ago, but she was on one of those Where Are They Now kind of VH1 specials or whatever. And she has the suit. She held up the Dyna Girl costume, and she looked like she could slip right into it.
Wow.
Like she was in Dyna Girl shape. And I actually, years ago, I heard about Mark Evanier, the comic book writer and a kind of show business historian, and he did a lot of work with the Kroffts. And he has a story about how he was wandering around the studio one day, and in the trash, he just saw like someone throwing in the dumpster the costumes. The Electra Woman and Dyna Girl costumes were just being thrown away.
Wow.
He fished them out, took them home just because it seemed like, well, how can you throw this away? And a few years ago, he went to Judy was appearing at one of those Hollywood autograph shows, and Mark showed up and handed her old costume, which she has now.
Very nice.
Yeah, and apparently Mark still has the Electra Woman costume, just because, as far as he can tell, Deirdre Hall has zero interest in it. He'd happily give it to her if she wants it, but I don't think she does. But yeah, Judy has her old suit, and man, she looks like if she wanted to pop it on and do some crime fighting, she could do it right now.
Well, it's funny too, just like the way this whole concept of Electra Woman and Dyna Girl continues to live on in a way, because I mean, you had the CW or the WB, I guess it was back in the WB days, when they did the pilot with Marky Post as Electra Woman, and then there was the recent series that was and that one had I don't know if the other one did, but that one had Sid and Marty Krofft's blessing, maybe even backing on it. I saw an episode or two. Being the old school fan, I thought here's the weird thing. I thought that one went a little too far, whereas I thought the Marky Post one was actually kind of charming in its own way.
Yeah. I've not seen the 2016 version yet. One of these days I'll have to check it out.
Yeah.
I'm not expecting much, but I'll take a look at some point.
Right. So why don't we get into discussing this episode here?
This maximum security prison houses only the most diabolical criminals in our society, such as this man.
You may tell your warden that these bars are useless. No cell has been built that can hold. The Sorcerer.
But apparently nobody thought to put up a power dampener or something in this place because, or what he was waiting for, but he manages to conjure up his robes and then disappears in a puff of smoke, claiming he wants revenge on Electra Woman and Dyna Girl for putting him behind bars.
Yeah, apparently he could have just popped out of there whenever he wanted.
Yeah.
Just, in no particular hurry, I guess.
No particular hurry, no. I guess he had
and I like how just right away you get such an over-the-top villain.
Oh, yeah.
In that this guy is just ready to chew all the scenery.
Yeah.
Michael Constantine.
Yes.
And just goes for it, not holding back. This is going to be as over-the-top as we can be.
Yes, exactly. What else have I seen him in, though? Michael Constantine. I know he's a staple of 70s and 80s television.
Yeah, I looked him up because I wasn't sure myself. The most interesting credit, I think, is that he was one of the main actors on Room 222.
That's why.
He was the principal on. And also on Room 222 was Judy Strangis.
Yes. Okay.
She was a regular, she was not one of the main characters, but she was a regular character for most of the run. So here you are, Electra Woman episode 1. You have a Room 222 cast reunion happening. Michael Constantine, yeah, he did a ton of work over the years. I think he's still alive. He's in his 90s. And I never saw My Big Fat Greek Wedding, but I believe he was one of the stars of that, both the movie and the sequel and the TV show and all those Big Fat Greek Wedding shows and movies.
Right.
People would know him from that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right about the over the top. I mean, you have to. You're getting into these costumes and stuff, and that was the one thing I did like. I mean, because when we're introduced to Laurie and Judy, even there at the beginning, their portrayal, their performance is earnest, but it's not entirely over the top.
Judy, you didn't have anything to do with us getting this assignment, did you? Who, me? You think I'd ask Newsmaker magazine to let us interview Colorado Johnson, Mr. Country Rock himself? Oh. No, of course not. You wouldn't do that, would you? No. The Electra Comps. Frank's trying to reach us. We better get away from this crowd. It's okay. We're not being observed. You can bring him in now. What's up, Frank?
Trouble. Crime Scope has picked up on something big.
And you need Electra Woman and Dyna Girl.
And fast.
We're heading back to Electra Base immediately. Hey, what about Colorado Johnson? Sorry. Hey, he's coming out right now. Julie, where are your manners? Wave goodbye. Oh, Frank.
There's that little bit I notice, right off the bat, Judy reminding me of Burt Ward with her enthusiasm as they're trying to get close to Colorado Johnson, the country rock star.
I love that scene of waiting to see Colorado Johnson, which I can assume that was a John Denver reference.
Maybe, yeah.
I would assume that was a play on the name John Denver.
John Denver, yeah, Denver, Colorado, yeah. I didn't even catch that at first, but you're right. And then Laurie's own, more subdued. She's but when she needs to as Electra Woman, she steps up and she's more forceful, but she's more subdued like Adam was. I mean, there's even a little bit there because when they get the call from Frank that they're needed back at Electra Base and he needs them back immediately, they have to break off their assignment. And of course, Judy is upset a bit, and Laurie chastises her and says, "Now say goodbye." And it reminds me of all the times Bruce or Batman would chastise Dick or Robin, and it's like, mind your manners or what have you.
Yeah,
yeah.
There's no time to be a teenager.
Right.
Go fight some crime.
Gotta go fight some crime.
What I love in that scene is that when they're talking to Frank and they're both looking at their Electra Comps, those big wrist packs, and I just like that they're in their civilian 70s clothing, but with the giant electric. Wouldn't that look a little strange to the people around them? That they're wearing these giant things.
Nobody notices them wearing it. Nobody, and of course, if you know Electra Woman and Dyna Girl and from the way this is all established, they're all set up already. The world knows who they are. I mean, they caught the Sorcerer before they put him behind bars. So you'd think somebody would go, "Hey, cool, look, Laurie and Judy have got like fake Electra Comps. What is that, like jewelry or something?"
Yep.
Oh.
Now, in this case, of course, nobody noticed because no one even turned around. All we see of that crowd is just the backs of their heads because that group is just so excited about Colorado Johnson.
Yes. Yep, exactly, yeah. I love the whole thing. Again, we go through this whole thing of like they pull up in the car, they get to the house, they go down the elevator. I mean, it's not as expensive as Batman, but they've got like their equivalent of the bat poles in the elevator. They make the change. We get to see that, which we never saw on the Batman show, and then they come out to the under, I don't know, what do they call the what was it called? Electra Base. That was it. We see the Electra Base, and Frank.
I think the elevator is very clever in that it's not an elevator for one thing. They found a way to visually suggest an elevator.
Yes.
And that you see them, they're inside that little thing with the little black area with the backdrop, the kind of beaded curtain backdrop around them. And then when they cut to the base outside the elevator, there's just big downward pointing arrows painted on the wall.
Yes.
And then like a rectangle of light. Like they shine a light on the wall that travels down the wall to simulate the elevator arriving.
Yes.
So it's a very clever visual in that it cost them 75 cents. They don't have to have a working elevator on set, and yet it does the job.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. And as a kid, I ate it all up. The Electra Comps, the Electra car, Crime Scope, the main computer and everything. Just, I thought it was, because again, we didn't have Batman anymore other than the repeats. We weren't getting new stuff. And here are these two. And to me, they just fit right in there. And it was like watching Batman again, except they're women now, and they're attractive women too. Because I'm at the point now, I'm about 8-9 years old, noticing Wonder Woman, the Bionic Woman, and Isis all at the same time, and along comes these two, and it's like, Electra, wow.
Yeah, it's kind of an obvious idea in retrospect, but I guess Ruby Spears were the ones that came up with it, and that's it's a very shamelessly, let's do Batman and Robin for Saturday morning with women.
Yeah, exactly. Especially since it was proving well with other things, the prime time, and ISIS was already in full swing. So let's go for it.
The real heart of the women's superhero movement of the 70s, mid 70s, and it all happened within a year. Mm-hmm. Of Isis, and then Wonder Woman, and then Bionic Woman, and then finally Electra Woman and Dyna Girl. But what a year.
Yeah. Yeah. I always thought it odd, though, that because the show did go on, the Krofft Superstars, like why there weren't more, Electra Woman segments in the seasons that followed.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I guess it could just be a matter of we'll make this many, and especially with Saturday morning shows, like they knew kids will watch the same thing over and over and over again. And so like most Saturday morning shows, they only make 13 episodes for a season, because then you can run those 13 4 times and you've filled a whole year at that point. I think with some of the Krofft Super Show segments, they wouldn't even make 13. Well, I guess they made 16 if you split them up that way,
right,
into the shorter segments. But the idea was we can run these a million times. We don't have to make too many of them. And it's an anthology series. We're going to have a whole bunch of different segments. So we can pull shows out, pop new other shows back in. So we're not going to need too many of any one segment for this show.
Right. It's funny, though, because they went to all the trouble. You've got the costuming, you've got the set design. Hell, you've got the Electra car, that I mean, I'm sure somebody designed that, and they probably looked at it and said, "Hey, this would be cool for a future show or something." It actually reminds me of, and you may not be familiar with this, but the mayor of Chickentown would be Doctor Who's car, the Who-mobile, they called it. Actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I do not know the Who-mobile.
Yeah. The third Doctor had a similar looking kind of, how would you describe that thing? The way it looks and such? Because I'm guessing it's got the one wheel in the front and the 2 wheels in the back, like his did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a 3-wheel vehicle. It's little.
Yeah.
It's kind of like you shrunk down Luke's land speeder a little bit. I noticed that in some scenes it looks like they speed up the film.
Yes.
When that car is moving around, so it looks very funny if you look at it, if you really look at it, because that thing probably did not really move very fast. So they would just crank up the film speed when they wanted to look like they were really flying.
Right. Well, there's another thing then it's got in common with Batman, because the Batmobile couldn't go faster than 35 miles an hour. Yeah. So anything they did, they cranked up the speed on that as well to make it look faster.
Sure.
Well, anyway, we get to Electra Base.
I'm sorry to take you away from your magazine assignment.
It wasn't just another assignment, Frank. It was Colorado Johnson.
What's Crime Skull picked up on?
Oh, the Sorcerer. He's escaped.
Oh.
So, the Sorcerer's up to his old tricks again, huh?
Yes, isn't he always?
And it's up to Electra Woman and Dyna Girl to put him back in jail.
That's right.
Well, where do we start looking? How do we find them? Oh, the crime scope.
What is it, Frank?
Someone's trying to break through our communication system on our secret frequency.
Electra Woman. It's the Sorcerer.
Greetings, ladies, and of course, my dear Frank. By now, I'm certain you've learned of my escape.
Well, if you weren't happy there, I'm sure we could have arranged a cell with a view.
Please, Electra Woman, I've no time for idle chit-chat. I have an important announcement to make.
Just get on with it, Sorcerer.
Patience. Patience, Dyna girl. It isn't every day I have a chance to announce my plans to steal all the gold from Fort Knox.
What?
You'll never get away with it, Sorcerer.
We see that Crime Scope now has been taken over by the Sorcerer as he communicates directly with Electra Woman and Dyna Girl. And we also see that he knows Frank as well. You know, referring to him by his full name, Frank Heflin.
Yes. Yeah, you wonder what kind of history these people all have together, that everybody knows everybody.
See, that's the kind of thing that always gets my head going and thinking, you know, okay, the history with Frank, or, you know, and there's maybe like Frank couldn't deal with the Sorcerer years ago, and so but he had the equipment and he knew he was getting older, so he recruited these two. Like, what is the story? And I'm not going ahead and watching future episodes, so I have to wonder, does he always stay in Electra base? Does he ever get out? Is he kind of like Alfred sometimes, being a bigger part rather than just the man on the scene there relaying information?
Yeah, and I watched this whole series just, I don't know, a couple of years ago. So it's been at least 2-3 years since I went through the whole series. And off the top of my head, I do not remember Frank ever getting out of the basement.
Oh, jeez.
I could be wrong, though.
Oh, so he's just like every other geek with all these toys and stuff, and he never leaves his basement.
but yeah, you do start it if your mind works the way ours do. You want that history and the origins and what happened before that, because we're just jumping into this first episode, and they know each other and they've fought before, and we're not going to get any kind of rich backstory at any point,
right?
The way we wish we would.
Right.
So maybe someday if they do I'd love to see like a modern comic book version where they could really dive into like the way that they've done those Hanna-Barbera comics in the last few years with like Future Quest, and they go into the origin of the Herculoids and Johnny Quest and Birdman and all that, and it'd be great to see someone do something like that with these characters.
Now there's something like Dynamite Comics. You know, you guys are always jumping on the bandwagon, grabbing all these properties and stuff. Electra Woman and Dyna Girl, that would be something to see.
Yeah, because there was a Krofft Supershow comic book back in the 70s.
Yes.
And I do have that. They made maybe 6 or 8 issues. And off the top of my head, I don't think Electra Woman was part of it. I don't think they did Electra Woman stories. That they did, you know, Magic Mongo and Wonderbug and a bunch of the segments. And unless I'm forgetting, I don't think we even got Electra Woman in those comics.
Wow. Electra shocking.
You know, just their chance.
Anyway, the Sorcerer plans to steal all the gold in Fort Knox, and we see just you know, that's a pretty typical plot that we see I mean, there was even an episode where Catwoman wanted to steal all the gold in Fort Knox. But what I thought was interesting was the way he uses his powers. It's not only just he's this powerful sorcerer; he'll do things trivial, like when he conjures up a card saying "Try and stop me."
Yes, or the trumpet. He has a little trumpet pop up to to play for his big announcement.
Yes. I just thought that was, you know, pretty funny too, because then again the mind races and you're like, okay, so what's the source of his power? Does it ever drain? You know, if you're doing things like this. I remember when we used to play Dungeons and Dragons, and sometimes we'd have a person playing a magic user who would like to do little stupid tricks like that every once in a while. And we're like, don't waste your spells.
Yeah, and it's that old trope of, again, we have a villain. If this villain had real powers like this, he could have gotten along just fine in the world, legitimately.
Yes.
You know, his powers already are worth more than the gold in Fort Knox.
Yeah.
If he just apply himself.
True. He plans. We see him then talking to his assistant afterwards, Miss Dazzle.
Miss Dazzle.
Now, I don't know if you consider them like they do in Batman. They call them the malls. I don't think it's so much because at this point now we're not talking about malls the way it's like, gun-toting people and such like that. But definitely an assistant.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep, and that's I looked this woman up as well, Susan Lanier.
Yes,
and she's still working. I think it looked like she had some upcoming credits.
Yes,
so she's still out there too. And not much popped out at me from her credits. The most interesting thing I saw in her credits was she was Chrissy Snow in an unaired pilot for Three's Company.
Yes.
All right, you dumb plant. Don't just sit there. Grow.
His room's all clean, and I made his bed.
Oh, good. I'm glad you're getting used to the idea.
Not really. But as long as Jack's going to be living here, we ought to try to make him feel at home.
I already did my bit. I put the toilet seat up.
I'm still not sure we're doing the right thing. I wish I hadn't let you talk me into it.
Oh, come on, Chrissy. There is nothing to worry about.
He's a man, and you know how men are.
Not lately.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting. That apparently, pre-Suzanne Summers, this woman was almost Chrissy.
I saw a still from it with Janet and Jack, John Ritter and such. And it was an interesting thing to see because she was wearing an outfit that Chrissy would later wear, like the Suzanne Summers would later wear in an episode. So it's like, what is she doing wearing Chrissy's clothes? She's Chrissy.
Yeah. I gotta say, I'm impressed by how well you carefully remember every detail of Suzanne Summers' outfits from 40 years ago, John.
I know. Oh, I never got over her leaving. Oh man. So the sorcerer plans to trap, and I love this phrase, the voltage vixens.
Yes, I made a note of that as well. I love that he called them those two interfering voltage vixens.
Yes. That was really good. He's got this mirror trap that he's planning to use, and Miss Dazzle is amused by the whole thing. She thinks it's fantastic. Yeah. We cut back to Electra Base where Frank is working on the Electra beam that he says should help them in stopping the Sorcerer, but they get an alert that the Sorcerer is robbing a museum. So they take the Electra car and off they go in their sped up film.
Yep.
Yes.
If he's planning on stealing all the gold from Fort Knox, what could he possibly want from the county museum?
Well, my little golden puppy, you must be worth well over $1 million. Now to put you where you'll be safe.
And I thought it was interesting. They didn't go with the usual, I hold it in my hand, stay perfectly still, and it disappears. Hold the shot, we'll take it off your hands, and then we'll cut, and we'll continue filming. They have him put it under the robe, and then like zoom in and zoom out. And it's like when he opens the robe again, it's like, ta-da.
Yeah, it made some, in several cases throughout this episode, some interesting editing choices.
Yes, they did.
Some of which work and some of which maybe did not work so well, but some interesting choices.
Right. Because he does do a disappearing act of himself, because when the two arrive and confront him, he's got, the old rope trick going where he's climbing up the rope and Electra Woman's like, there's nowhere for you to go. And he disappears from view. So it's not like they couldn't do. I mean, if they're able to have him totally disappear, why not have, the statue disappear that way? I don't know. I thought it was just interesting. Yeah. Like you say, interesting choices on how to display the magic, how to cut and edit some of the scenes and such.
Yeah.
Yeah. But with him gone, they are still able to trace him thanks to the Electra car, and they race to his lair. He is at his lair, and he says that the statue is only bait to bring the two of them in, which I thought was interesting too, because it's like, you're supposed to be planning Fort Knox, but he's got to get them out of the way first. So what better way to do it than steal something expensive and have them come racing to him?
It seems like a needlessly complicated plan, but that's how these things tend to work.
They arrive at his home, and it's an actual house, which I also thought it wasn't like an abandoned anything. He's living in a house.
It's just his house. There was a pile of milk bottles and newspapers waiting for him after he finally broke out of jail.
Yes. But before they go in, Frank contacts them, and he warns them they could be walking into a trap. But Electra Woman is determined to move forward as they enter, and yes, they are trapped as we get this swirling triangle that moves towards them. And it's interesting because I think, if I'm not mistaken, we only see Dyna Girl, writhing under the sound and such, like, and a cat. I thought it was going to be her first, because even Electra Woman goes, wait a moment, this could be the trap. They pause, and then she goes, go ahead and let's Dyna Girl go first.
That's right. This might be the trap. Yes, this is the trap. We shall now enter the trap. Here we go.
And you go first.
Yeah. And yeah, that was kind of looked more like the 60s than the 70s at that point, with the spinning crazy lighting effects. And
yes.
that was quite a trap. It was like they were trapped in a Jefferson Airplane video or something.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, I seem to remember that kind of trippy visuals on several of the episodes. Yeah. But they are transported to a stage where the only two people in the audience are the Sorcerer and Ms. Dazzle. He has a cage appear around them, and they quickly find out that their Electra Force beams don't work because he's cut them off from Crime Scope, which is the way the power is channeled.
Yeah, that's interesting that they go into a lot of they spend a lot of time over the course of the series, I think, really dealing with those Electra Comps and what they can do and how they work and why they don't work. And there's always a lot going on with those things.
Well, see, that's what I'm saying. It's like, then you do things like that, and it's like, now, I don't know, maybe we'll see in the next episode continuity's thrown out the window, but I know, Star Trek, George Takei was always about, well, no, it's this button to do this, and it's this, and it's like, dude, it's a bunch of lit lights on a panel there. It doesn't matter. And half the time but he was always insistent, this is the way the controls work. William Hartnell, the first Doctor, was the same way. He would be like, no, this is the way it works. We established it here. We're going to continue it through there. And I find it interesting. If you go to all that trouble for a show that you're only doing, in the end, 8 stories, 16 segments, and it'll be interesting to see if they keep up the continuity with the detail of how the Electra Comps work and how they're powered and all that. Because I do appreciate that kind of detail. Myself.
Yeah, and there's certainly plenty of it. I don't know that they're going to bother being consistent with it. I think it's more likely just whatever the story calls for as they go along.
Yeah.
Like, oh, by the way, this week it can also do this.
Right. Well, that's often a staple of 60s, 70s, and 80s television, whether it's the gadget, the device, or even the character. It's like, we need the character to do this week for the sake of the story. And it's like, but the character wouldn't act that way. Yeah, but we need it for the story. So,
sure. Or what's in Batman's utility belt.
Right.
Whatever he needs is what's in there.
Yeah, exactly. So the Sorcerer conjures up a sign that says Electra Woman and Dyna Girl versus the man-eating tiger, and he tosses it towards the stage, and as he does, it changes into another cage that is alongside their cage with a tiger in it. I loved it. Because, again, it's just, he couldn't just simply just flick his hand and just, there's the cage. No, he's got the sign, and he throws the sign, and that changes into the whole thing, which was kind of cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's very theatrical.
Yes, very theatrical. It is. But he's not done yet. He also has a running water faucet that's creating a weight system. And as the more water gets into the bucket, it will slowly lower down and raise the door to the cage that will release the tiger, sending it towards Electra Woman and Dyna Girl.
What could possibly go wrong? Exactly. That's a solid plan. That's perfect.
It's perfect. And it's right out of Batman.
Oh, yeah.
You could see some, maybe not the tiger, it might be something else, but who knows? I mean, it definitely, and it brings us to the end of part 1, but not before he does one other thing. Now, I don't know if it's that he's giving them a sporting chance or he's taunting them because he takes the key to their cage and leaves it just out of reach of them.
Yep.
You've got no power in the Electra Comps, so they can't get out that way. The water is slowly filling up and the door's slowly rising, and the key is just out of reach as we come to the end of part 1.
Love it.
Yep.
That's a cliffhanger.
That's a cliffhanger. And this is the kicker then. All right, that was what? 12 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. 12 minutes. You watched for 12 minutes and then you waited a week for the conclusion.
That's a long week.
That's a long week. That's a long, and you know what? When you think about also kids and such, that because you've got all those other segments on the show too, to remember, and all the other things that were going on. And I don't know, but there I was there the following Saturday, the 18th, waiting to see how these two got out of it.
Yeah. Because now the Batman cliffhangers, you didn't have to wait a whole week, right?
No, you
they
didn't
would show
have
2 episodes a week.
Exactly. And back then it turned out that more people just instead watched the Thursday night episode, not even bothering to watch the Wednesday night. I mean, the Wednesday night did all right, but the ratings were always better on Thursday night because people were like, well, we'll just watch the recap and off we go.
Sure, that makes sense.
Yeah.
He seems to have thought of everything. Steel cage, a man-eating tiger, keys out of reach, and no electric powers. And now he's on his way to Fort Knox.
What an Electra mess.
We'll find out what happens to Electra Woman and Dyna Girl in part 2 after these messages.
Kid stuff, marbles,
dressing up,
skateboards,
hostess.
A kid's world is a special world, and Hostess is a part of it. Hostess and kids, they go together.
Fresh, wholesome Hostess cupcakes, fruit pies, golden Twinkies with cream filling.
A kid's world is a special world, and Hostess is a part of it. Hostess and kids, they go together.
Enjoy a special 1-hour season premiere of Happy Days Tuesday night at 8 on ABC.
Jack in the Box restaurants are having a taco sale. You can get 3 of our delicious regular tacos for just 89 cents. Or you can get 2 of our great big super tacos for just 99 cents. But you better hurry. The sale ends September 26th.
Bionic Woman fights for her life and the life of Steve Austin.
This time she won't escape.
The Bionic Woman.
They broke her neck. And you're going to tell me who they are, or I'm going to break yours.
A vow of vengeance becomes a death wish, and Beretta takes on a kung fu killer. Then, the 3 most beautiful detectives in the world become racetrack groupies to investigate the death of a driver. Get them while they're hot. They're Charlie's Angels, right after the Bionic Woman and Beretta.
A night of excitement Wednesday at 8 on ABC.
So we come into part 2 and we see that since they don't have their powers, they're going to have to rely on their athletic ability. Electra Woman gives Dyna Girl a boost up. She cups her hands and basically what should have been, today would have been a visual of her throwing her out of the cage and everything. But instead it's just, and again, here's that editing you talked about. We don't actually see her getting hoisted upward. Instead, we cut to outside the cage as she is blue screen lowered or green screen lowered down to the ground.
Yeah, with that, this is one of the strangest moments as far as what we see and what we don't see. And yeah, I like the little pep talk from Electra Woman where she even says, "We're gonna have this is gonna take Laurie and Judy to get out of this."
Yes,
and this is going to be Judy apparently doing some amazing acrobatic flip maneuver over the top of the cage that we do not see at all. and what we do see, it looks like a superpower because what we see does not look natural. She's weirdly floating down to the ground outside the cage.
Like the Electra Comps slowed her fall or something.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, but she does land, and she does manage to get the key and get Electra Woman out just in time as the tiger comes bounding out at her, and they close the door behind them.
Since we don't find your paws refreshing, we'll have to say goodbye.
Right. We have an appointment with one slippery sorcerer.
Yeah, well, you say just in time, but again, there's some weird editing with the tiger because they cut to the tiger walking towards them like 3 or 4 times.
Yes.
The tiger would have covered about a quarter of a mile as they keep cutting back and forth, showing, yep, tiger's still headed right towards them. The tiger started from 8 feet away, and for some reason, it's still walking towards them.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me of when I was a kid and like I would have like a toy plane or a helicopter or a rocket or something, and it's like it's falling, and I would like have my hand up high and then I would like bring it down towards the ground, and just before it would hit I would kind of go back up to the top again. We're still falling.
That's right. Not quite there yet, folks.
Yeah. I
also love Judy's comment at one point. Judy says, "Lucky he's only a man-eating tiger."
Yes. Yeah. She gets some good dialogue.
Yeah.
She does, she does. And she says it with such earnestness, such relish, the way Burt Ward would. I have to wonder, I would love to ask her that, like, did she ever, they must have made the realization that, hey, we're doing Batman here. They had to have, the two of them. And
absolutely.
Did she channel
I'm sure that they knew, I'm sure they knew the show. Everybody watched Batman.
Yeah. So they're off to go capture Sorcerer, but Frank calls them. He wants them back at Electra Base because he has the beam working now. So we cut to the Sorcerer, who arrives at Fort Knox, and he's able to get past the guard with a hypnotizing ball. Now, I did like this because we actually will see that hypnotizing ball again, so it's part of his arsenal. And I always like little things like that. I mean, when we reviewed the Batman series, I would always be like looking for what are the usual gimmicks we see from the recurring villains. And even if we had like a one-time or two-time villain, I'd be like desperately looking. Like recently I was actually re-listening to the Marcia Queen of Diamonds episode, and Robin proclaims that Marcia's using her sleeping diamond dust. And I was like, there you go. There's something she's got in her. I can't explain anything else about her, but there you go. You got that.
No, I think this is the final character that we meet in this story is the Fort Knox guy. I looked him up as well, actor James Mock. This is his sole credit on IMDb.
Who are you? Allow me to introduce myself. I am the Sorcerer, and this is my assistant, Miss Dazzle.
Pleased to meet you.
But no one is allowed here. I hoped you'd make an exception in my case.
Bravo!
I hoped you'd see it my way. Come, Miss Dazzle, we must be off to the main vault.
How bad was it when I first saw him? I thought it was Jimmy Doohan.
Oh, wow.
For a moment before he started talking.
Yeah, he was, I guess he would, not long after this, he would have been over at Filmation doing Space Academy, right?
Yes. Oh, man, his sole credit. Well, there you go. There you go.
Sure. That's a good one.
It's a good one.
You only have one credit. This is the one to have, Electra Woman and Dyna Girl.
Okay, so he's explaining to the family. Now, kids, I'm going to be on this show called Electra Woman and Dyna Girl, and it's part of a show called Captain Cool and the Kongs, Krofft Superstars, and then we're going to sit here and I don't know when the segment airs, but, and they're watching everything else and going, what the heck?
But hang on, because this is the start of something big. The phone is going to keep on ringing.
Yes.
But no. James Mock, a fine job.
A fine job, yes. he hypnotizes well, so.
Yes.
So Frank shows them back at Electra Base that he now has created the beam that acts as a magnet so that they can repel or pull things towards them as they need to. The two head off to Fort Knox in the Electra car and realize that they need to get there fast, so they convert it to, and when I say convert it, as in it just takes off against a blue screen, the Electra plane.
There you go.
Yes. Yeah. Now, see, here's where because I was saying, when we were talking about Judy falling from the cage, it looked like a superpower. They could have done this here, and they didn't. Once they get there, they hover over Fort Knox, which we don't see, and they just say, we don't see like the plane hovering over, but they say, okay, we're going to hover and descend using our Electra power. So clearly, the Electra Comps can slow down their ascent with like some sort of electromagnetism or something.
Yeah, I would hope, since they're just hurling themselves out of an airplane.
Right.
One would hope the Electra Comps are going to do something to break that fall.
Oh, man. So they reach Fort Knox.
Don't you two ever give up?
Not until you're back behind bars, where you belong.
What do we do now, Sorcerer?
Fear not, Miss Dazzle. The Sorcerer always has one trick up his sleeve.
But the Sorcerer has the box he was talking about earlier that he was also going to use against them. It explodes and creates this illusional storm, but it looks pretty real at the time, especially since we see their hair being tossed about.
Electra Woman, Dyna Girl, the crime scope indicates that there is no storm. I repeat, there is no storm. Can you hear me? There is no storm. Use your Electra degravitators.
One of my favorite illusions. And now, to work.
Yeah, I noticed that touch as well, that their hair was blown around. I like that touch that they thought to, let's turn a fan on.
Right. Meanwhile, while they're fighting the storm, the Sorcerer goes over to where all the gold, this is all of it now in this one large, and it's a fairly large room, but still, that's all the gold in Fort Knox. He uses his mirror trick to make the gold disappear. He even says it's a mirror trick. So, right then and there, I'm like going, mirror tricks wouldn't involve making gold transport. It would just make it look like it's not there. I even knew that, like, as I'm watching this, so yeah. I caught on to that pretty quickly, but nobody else seemed to right away, And I did like, because there's Frank and he's watching the whole thing and or listening in. I don't know. I don't think he had a view screen of what was going on, but he said CrimeScope told them to Electra degravitate, and that would disrupt the illusion.
Yeah. So once again, we get more floating downwards.
Yes.
Seems to be an ongoing theme.
Yes. And that's the thing, too. They also float down to the main room where all the gold is, and they see it's all gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. They race after the Sorcerer. He tosses another hypnotizing ball at the two.
Shield your eyes, Dyna Girl. It looks like the Electra Comps may come in handy after all.
Run, Miss Dazzle. Don't look.
It looks like the Electra beam is also quicker than the eye.
And it's once again, it's CrimeScope that figures out that the gold is still in Fort Knox, and it was just made to look like it disappeared. So I'm wondering, because then, what was the point of all this with the Sorcerer? Was it just because I could do it? Was this like, what was his name? Years and years and years ago, was it the 70s or the 80s, when he claimed he was going to make the Statue of Liberty disappear on a show?
Copperfield?
Copperfield, yeah. Was that just basically
I'm not sure
again?
what the long-term plan was. Like, as far it looks like the gold is gone. At some point, you're going to have to actually take the gold. Otherwise, what's the point? What are we doing? Unless I thought the idea was that he would get the gold eventually, unless he just wanted to destabilize the economy.
Here's the thing I'm thinking. You know, if you were going to take this a step further with the story, he knows he could never move that much gold himself. It just wouldn't be possible to move that much gold. So instead, what he does is he ransoms it for, say, $1 billion or something. And when they pay it up, he makes it reappear saying, I'm giving it back to you now.
That plan makes so much sense that I don't think the sorcerer would have done that. His plan would have been way stupider.
Yes. Oh. Well, we get an end scene with the two of them and our guard, as they've now wrapped up the crooks in magic boxes, like that you would cut them in half with.
Yes, just to be silly, just for the magic theme.
Just for the magic theme, and then the weird thing is they turn on their electro beams and make the two of them disappear. Now, did they really transport them this time, or did they do a mirror trick and just make them look invisible? What was the point?
Nobody knows what's going on at this point. And hopefully they didn't just beam him straight back to that same jail cell that he's able to pop back out of whenever he wants.
Exactly.
Although I believe this is one of the few villains that we are going to get a repeat appearance of later in the series.
Yes, I believe so.
So we can safely assume he is going to escape one way or another.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Here's the funny thing. Up until the very end, most of this made some kind of weird sense, and then the very ending just sort of threw me off. It was almost like they realized they had to come to an end, and they said, just do this, and this, and it'll be cute.
They were all just so dizzy and confused at that point after multiple hypnotisms and fake lightning storms, and they didn't know what they were doing at that point.
Yeah. Okay, so let me ask you this. Like we did on Batcave, I always had my guest hosts give a rating based on Robin's exclamations of "Holy what?" And yes. what I would like to do is the same thing here, but we're going to do Electra. So how would you exclaim as Dyna Girl, Electra what, to sum up this experience?
Well, it's been a few years since I've watched these, and so it's great to revisit the series. This was such a fun introduction to the series, and I really enjoyed the whole thing and all the crazy effects. So I'm going to go, in honor of Miss Dazzle, I'm going to say this was Electra Dazzling.
Oh, okay, good. Very cool. I actually just went simpler. I wish I'd thought of that. It was Electra Fun. I did enjoy it. Is it hokey? Yeah. But you can clearly see, as we've been pointing out along the way here, many of the influences that Batman had on this show, right from, the Electra exclamations to the Electra car and the way it emerges from, the cave. I mean, there's a cave.
Sure. You need a cave. Every decent superhero needs a cave. And I think Electro Fun is a fine exclamation as well, because this definitely was great fun.
It was. So as we come to the end of this episode here, Kevin, I just want to turn things over to you for a moment. What's happening on over at the Flopcast?
Yeah, the Flopcast is, as you mentioned, we're part of the ESO network of silly, geeky podcasts. Flopcast is a very silly, geeky show, and we really obsess over comic books and cartoons, Saturday morning TV. So this is kind of combining two great loves of mine in that we have superheroes and we have Saturday morning TV of the 70s. So this is the kind of thing that we obsess over on the Flopcast.
And it's a very cool show, folks. If you do enjoy your Saturday morning cartoons, your 70s, because I still keep saying your show reminds me of shows like The Great Space Coaster and such, what with the supercomputer and, you've got the mayor there and everything. You've got characters right out of there. So it's fantastic.
Well, speaking of The Great Space Coaster, there was one episode a couple years back where Gary Gnu himself actually made a guest appearance on the Flopcast.
Yes, I do. I remember that. And every once in a while, you've got him on there doing the opening tag.
Yeah, he did a little podcast ID for us with actual Gary Gnu appeared on our show, which I still can't believe happened.
It was really cool. It was really cool.
Yes.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Batcave Podcast. Tune in, folks. Kevin and I will be back soon talking about the next episode of Electra Woman and Dyna Girl. Plus, we're going to have shows on Monster Squad. I've got
Monster Squad.
Monster Squad. We've got a series of reviews we're lining up there. Plus, as we finish up the Filmation 60s Batman, we're going to be taking on the Filmation 70s Batman as well. So hopefully hopefully that's going to fare. Batmite, I know. Hopefully this thing fares as well, because the 60s Filmation one we were very kind to. We actually found it very charming and all. I don't know if we're going to be able to say that about the 70s one, but we'll see.
I love them both.
Yes, for different reasons. And speaking of Electra Woman and Dyna Girl, the next time Kevin and I do sit down to talk about the two Voltage Vixens, they're going to take on Glitter Rock and his plan to take over the kingdom of Turenberg. Now that just sounds interesting in itself, but when you see what Glitter Rock looks like, that also just notches it up a whole nother level.
I can't wait.
I can't either. So until then, folks, thank you so much for listening. Once again, Kevin, everyone, take care, everybody.
Bye.
See you next week on the really cool Krofft Supershow.
Don't get left behind. Take a trip with us today. We will lead you to a land of dreams. Krofft has some super shows. They will blow your mind away. When you join us, you'll know why we say.
Thanks for listening, chums. I don't have a Batphone, but you can contact the Batcave Podcast through its Facebook page, Twitter, email at thebatcavepodcast@gmail.com. Subscribe to the podcast via Libsyn.com. That's LIBSYN.com. Or through iTunes. The Batcave Podcast is part of a series of pop culture podcasts from the Chronic Rift Network. Find them at chronicrift.com. So until next time, citizens, same bat time, same Batcave Podcast.
So